All right, so this video is if you were absent on Wednesday the 9th, which is a white day, that was early release day, and then we have Thursday the 10th, which will be a red day. So if you're absent either the 9th or the 10th of November, this is what this video is for. So what we're doing today is we're jumping into kind of putting all the things that we have done in reading and writing together. So we've talked about the different styles of writing, information piece. So you can do sequencing, and all this is in Schoology, and I'll show you that in a second. But with sequencing, we did the Rise of Backpack. We talked about how to annotate for sequencing. We talked about what sequencing is. We also talked about on page 29, we have compare and contrast. Again, we have how to annotate for that. And then we also have those notes underneath as well. We also have on page 30, description. We have the mentor text and how to annotate for that, and then also what that is underneath. And then we also have cause, effect, problem, solution. Again, you have that mentor text, how to annotate for it, and then also the notes as well. Okay, so you're going to want to reference back to page 28 to 31, because that's going to help you a great deal. And so I know since you're at home, you don't have that, so I'm going to show you where you can find it. If you go into the reading writing course in Schoology, you can actually find this in the notes section. In the notes section, we have the, let's see, down here, page 28, 29, 30, and 31. We have the notes for sequencing, compare and contrast, description, and cause and effect, problem, solution. We also, in the mentor text section, we have the mentor text here for you, sequencing, cause and effect, problem, solution. We have the description piece. We have compare and contrast. So you can find those in there if you're needing to find it. You just click on it. It'll open up and have all that information. Okay. But what you're going to do today is we're going to take a new mentor text, and we are basically going to annotate that mentor text to find the different writing structures, all of them. So we're going to be looking at a mentor text. It's actually called Vampires of the Deep. It looks like this. You can actually have access to this if you go to Schoology. I'll show you this again. In Schoology, in the mentor text folder, this one right here, it says Vampires of the Deep. If you have access to a printer, I want you to print it. That way you can annotate it. If you don't have access to a printer, you can write it on a separate sheet of paper, kind of talk through different things. It would really be best, though, if you could have a print of this, so you can actually add your annotations to it, because that's going to be the most helpful for you. So again, if you don't have access to that, you can do it on a separate sheet of paper, but just know that when you get back to school and you actually get the copy of it, you're going to want to actually add those annotations onto the actual piece, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and do that on here so you can see it. So what I ended up doing with this, in knowing that I have to annotate it for all 4 of the text structures, I have 4 different colors. And I have all different colors meaning the different things. So there's 4 different ones. We have description, sequencing, cause and effect, problem, solution, compare and contrast. And so all I did was I took 4 different colors. This down here is going to be my key. And so if I find something that is description, I'm going to take my green pen and I'm going to underline it. That way I know, oh, I underlined that because it's about description. Same thing with sequencing. For sequencing, if I circle like dates and stuff like that, I'm going to do that in orange. And I know I'm doing that because it is sequencing. Compare and contrast is purple. But then cause and effect, problem, solution is pink. And so again, if I underline those things, that's what you're going to have to do. Okay. So what I'm going to do really quickly is I'm going to read through this article. And then after I read through it, I'll kind of talk through some things that we're going to do with it. But you yourself are going to have to go and find those different examples. I'll start you to kind of show you to find them. But I want you to find the rest. Okay. All right, so I'm going to read this to you just so you have this down so you can see it. Vampires of the Deep, so you can just follow along. If, while I'm reading this, you have a copy of this already printed out, or you see something that is description, sequencing, cause and effect, problem, solution, compare and contrast, you can actually go ahead and annotate it while I'm reading it if you would like. You do not have to. I am not going to, just because I'm going to read it so you get the text in. All right, so Vampires of the Deep, the race to stop a blood-sucking fish from destroying America's largest lakes. All right, 11-year-old Beatrice Mertz, let's see, held a slimy creature in her hand. Its long, snake-like body wriggled and jerked about. Some 100 razor-sharp teeth gleamed in its gooey mouth. Beatrice grabbed her knife and, in one swift motion, severed the creature's head. She breathed a sigh of relief. It was the summer of 1941, and Beatrice was working on her mom's fishing boat on Lake Huron, one of the 5 Great Lakes along the border between the United States and Canada. The creature she had just killed was a fish called a sea lamprey. Like some sort of marine vampire, a lamprey attaches itself to a fish, drills a hole into its flesh, and slurps down its blood. It was Beatrice's job to get rid of as many lampreys as possible. This is important, if unpleasant. At the time, hundreds of thousands of sea lampreys were invading not just Lake Huron, but all the Great Lakes. And they were killing the fish that Beatrice's mom was trying to catch. When a fish came into the boat and there was a lamprey on it, my mom would say, "Beatsy, you take care of that lamprey," Beatrice remembers. She would never allow a live lamprey to go back into the water. The lampreys were not just posing a threat to the livelihoods of fishers like Beatrice's mom. They were on the path to causing catastrophic damage to the ecosystem. Could anything be done? Okay, the invasion heading. The Great Lakes are the largest body of fresh water in the world. With 9,000 miles of shoreline and thousands of tributaries, the Great Lakes ecosystem teems with wildlife. There are bald eagles, moose, gray wolves, and many types of birds. Millions of birds migrate through the Great Lakes region every year. Sea lampreys, however, don't belong there. They are native to the coast of the Atlantic Ocean. In the Great Lakes, lampreys are an invasive species. An invasive species is a plant or animal that gets introduced into a new environment and causes harm. So, how did lampreys end up in the lakes? More than 1,000 miles from the Atlantic Ocean? Many scientists think Lake Ontario was the first of the Great Lakes to be invaded by lampreys. They believe the fish entered the lake through the Erie Canal, a human-made waterway completed in 1825. The Erie Canal provided an easy passage for boats between New York Harbor and the Atlantic Ocean, on the Atlantic Ocean and the Great Lakes. In 1919, another canal, this one connecting Lake Ontario and Lake Erie, was deepened so larger ships could pass through. Excuse me. The deepening of the Welland Canal also made it possible for sea lampreys to swim from Lake Ontario into Lake Erie, where they were first discovered in 1921. From there, the fish spread into Lake Huron, Lake Michigan, and finally Lake Superior. All right, so I'm going to stop for just a second. I like the fact that they have this map here. This text feature is really important because if you don't know where the Great Lakes are, this gives you a zoom in of it, but also how it is worldly, so you see where it is at. Okay, so I like that one. All right, the next heading, blood-sucking machines. The sea lamprey has adapted over millions of years to be an efficient blood-sucking machine. It uses its toothy suction cup mouth to grip the skin of its prey and its sharp tongue to cut through the fish's scale. Then the lamprey releases the chemical to prevent the wound from healing, which means its victim's blood keeps flowing. In the ocean, lampreys live in a balance with their environment. They feed on large fish that can survive the blood-sucking, and they have predators like swordfish that keep their numbers in check. But in the Great Lakes, lampreys have no natural predators. As a result, their numbers exploded. What's more, fish in the Great Lakes are smaller than those in the ocean. For them, a lamprey attack is often a death sentence. So, as the lamprey population surged across the Great Lakes in the 1940s, populations of native fish like lake trout and lake whitefish were decimated, meaning they were killed. Commercial fishers like Beatrice's mom were the first to notice. More and more fish caught in nets had lampreys attached to them, or they had bloody wounds, a telltale sign of a lamprey attack. The fear in the fishing community was real. Fishing was at the heart of the Great Lakes economy and lifestyle. Without fish, thousands of people would lose their jobs. But the imbalance created by the lampreys wasn't just harming the fish. It was harming the entire ecosystem. In the Great Lakes, the lake trout was the top predator. It kept the number of smaller fish under control. With lamprey killing off the trout, the population of the smaller fish, called alewife, itself an invasive species, boomed. Alewives began gobbling up the food that other creatures needed to survive. Something had to be done, and fast. All right, so we're talking about this problem. This kind of goes with the problem solution. There's a lot of cause and effect in there as well, but there's a lot of problem solution there. So in the back, we get into the actual solution part of it. So searching for solutions. Scientists swiftly got to work. First, they needed to learn everything they could about the lamprey, how it grows, feeds, and breeds. Scientists discovered that the bloodthirsty fish migrate up rivers and streams to mate and spawn. Scientists also learned that when baby lampreys or larvae hatch, they don't feed on blood. The eyelash-sized larvae burrow into riverbeds and stick their heads out to feed on tiny plants floating in the water. Only after about 5 years do the larvae grow their suction cup mouths and razor-sharp teeth. Once they've transformed into bloodsuckers, they swim into the lakes in search of prey. Instead of trying to capture and kill sea lampreys in the vast open lakes, scientists decided to focus their efforts on the rivers and streams. They tested barriers and traps to catch sea lampreys as they swam up the rivers to breed. But the traps didn't always work and were easily destroyed by floods. Some scientists even experimented with cooking lampreys. If good to eat, lampreys could be caught in large numbers and sold as food. Unfortunately, scientists couldn't find an appetizing way to prepare them. Meanwhile, scientists tested chemicals that could poison sea lamprey larvae before they transformed into bloodsuckers. Finally, in 1956, scientists identified a promising chemical that would kill larvae but leave other creatures unharmed. The next year, they carefully applied the substance to the creek in Michigan. Within minutes, thousands of larvae floated to the surface dead. It seemed a solution had been found at last. All right, so here's where that problem solution comes into play, and like the solution is there. Okay, here we go into the last one. It's sea lampreys today. Talking about this too, there's been a lot of sequencing in here because it's had different years and things on when things were created and all that stuff. So this is going to end it with today. Scientists rushed to treat infested tributaries around the Great Lakes, but it wasn't until the early 1960s that sea lamprey populations finally started to decline. By then, so few predators were left that alewife numbers were exploding, and the little fish were consuming nearly all the food in the lakes. With little food, alewives then began dying by the billions, floating up in giant rotten masses, fouling beaches across the region. Eventually, scientists introduced a new predator, Pacific salmon, and also reintroduced lake trout. These fish help control the alewife population and restore balance in the Great Lakes ecosystem. Today, about 200 rivers are regularly treated to eliminate sea lamprey larvae. Though the fish still swim in the Great Lakes, their numbers are down 90%. Don't worry, they don't feed on humans. Scientists also are testing new ideas. For example, lampreys produce odors to tell each other which rivers are best for spawning, much like writing 5-star Yelp reviews. Scientists are working on ways to use these odors to lure lampreys into traps. All these efforts have saved the fishing business in the Great Lakes, which brings in $7 billion a year and employs 75,000 people. Without sea lamprey control, the Great Lakes fishery wouldn't exist as we know it, says Jenna Tews at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. As for Beatrice, who's now 92, has lived her whole life on the shores of Lake Huron. She's grateful that her beloved Great Lakes were saved from the lamprey invasion. But most of all, she's glad her days of beheading sea lampreys are over. Today, I wouldn't touch one, she says with a laugh. All right, so looking through this and kind of seeing what is happening with the different text structures, writing structures, what you're going to do is you're going to go and you're going to take those 4 different colors that you have, and we're just going to kind of mark up some things. I'm going to do a couple. I am not going to do very many because I want you to have the opportunity to go into the text and to find those different examples of the writing structures for sequencing, description, cause and effect, problem solution, and compare and contrast. So for example, up here on this very first one, the sentence up here, says slimy. I know I cut it off, so I apologize for that. But I'm going to do that in green. Slimy creature, long snake-like body, razor-sharp teeth, gooey mouth. All of this is description. That's why I did it in green, because the description is green. Okay. Something else I'm looking at for sequencing when I look at the actual page 28, again, you can find that in Schoology, is I went through and we circled the years. Okay. So what I'm going to do is if I see a year, I'm going to circle it. That's going to be what I do for sequencing. Because as I read this, there were a lot of dates in there. So I'm going to circle 1941. If I want to put down what happened in 1941, I can underline Beatrice. And that she killed a fish called sea lamprey. I could underline that so I know what happened. It kind of helps my brain in that sense. Another description piece, slurps down the blood. That's another description. So just doing them all in different types of colors is going to be helpful. So again, I'm going to kind of just go through this fairly quickly because, again, I want you to do it. If I come over here, I'm going to see... let's see. I have years over here, 1825, 1919, and 1921. Again, I can go and underline what actually happened in there. Some of this, too, kind of gets into the cause and effect. Let's see. Another canal. It was deepened so larger ships could pass through. The deepening made it possible for sea lamprey to swim through, so that's cause and effect. So again, I'm doing that in that pink color because my pink color is for cause and effect and problem solution. Okay. So anyway, what you're doing though is you're really just going in and you are annotating to find the different types of text structures. Right now I have 3 on there so far, but I can go in and find more of those 3. I can also find compare and contrast. That one's a little bit tougher, but you can find an example of that. Outside of that, something else I would like for you to do is go in and put a couple of the text features that you see So that way you can just remind yourself of, oh yeah, that's a map, that's a heading, that's a caption, whatever that is. So I want you to also do that as well. So I just want you to put everything that we've done in class, I want you to put in here. Okay. The last thing I want you to do is on a separate sheet of paper, you're going to skip this article. And I'm just going to show you what I did in another class. So that way you can see it. But I do want you to do this on a separate sheet of paper, and then you're going to take a picture of it and send it to me. And then what you'll do when you get back to class is you will take the skiff that you did on a separate sheet of paper. You'll take the annotations that you made on your piece of paper. Hopefully you were able to print, or you'll come get a copy of it and we'll make those annotations on there. You can watch this video again to make the annotations. But you'll put that on your next 2-page spread in your notebook. Okay, so this is Vampires of the Deep. We skipped this article, so yes, I want you to write this, and you'll take a picture of this and send it to me. So scope is where it's from. That's the source. Central idea, the purpose is to inform. We're informing about who is sea lampreys, what, the invasive species, where. Great Lakes, it started in the 1920s, and it's going to today. The format is it's an article, and the different features, I'm just putting down 3, map, headings, and photographs. Okay, so make sure you have that. Take a picture of it, send it to me. Make sure you have your annotations. Take a picture of that and send it to me. And then again, when you get back to school, you'll take all that information and you will put it on your next 2-page spread in your notebook. All right, so I'm looking for that. The last thing I wanted to show you is just on the back, attached to this article, is another infographic. It's very similar. It does talk about another invasive species, but it's about zebra mussels. This is just another, it was just attached to it. But again, this is just another way to present information like we talked about last class. But they're together because they're both about invasive species. All right. Okay, so I'm looking for, again, a picture of this that you did it, a picture of your annotations. You're sending that to me in an email, and then when you get back to school, you'll make sure to get all that stuff and put it in your next 2-page spread in your notebook. All right, that's all I got. Thanks.